Welcome back, everyone. On this lecture, we will calculate the return on assets for Apple and Microsoft. On this slide, we will now calculate the return on assets ratio for Apple. So, what is the return on assets ratio and why is it important? Well, to start, the return on assets ratio lets us know how much profit a company is able to generate from its assets. In simple terms, the return on assets measures how efficient the company is in generating earnings from their assets on their balance sheet. As such, the higher the ratio, the more efficient the company is at managing its balance sheet to generate profits. So, how is this ratio calculated? Return on assets is calculated as net income divided by the average total assets of the company. Here we have net income of $57.4 billion for Apple. We then calculate the average total assets by taking the sum of $323.9 billion plus $338.5 billion and dividing that by 2. That results in average total assets of around $331.2 billion for the 2 years. Once we do the math by taking net income and the average total assets, we come up with a return on assets ratio of 17.33 for Apple. So what does this mean? This tells us that for every $100 of assets, Apple is able to generate a profit of $17.33. In other words, Apple is able to be efficient with its assets and generate approximately 17% from its core assets. On this slide, we'll now calculate the return on assets for Microsoft. We'll use the same formula and take net income divided by the average total assets. First, we have net income of $44.3 billion in 2020. And then we've calculated the average total assets for 2020 and 2019, which comes up to around $293.9 billion for Microsoft. When we take net income over the average total assets, we come up with a return on assets of around 15.06. So big picture, what does this mean and how does it compare to Apple? Well, here we can see that Microsoft is able to generate a profit of around 15% from its assets, as compared to Apple's return of assets of 17.33. We can see that Microsoft is only able to generate around 15.06% as a return on its assets. The key point here is that using this metric, Apple is more efficient than Microsoft in terms of its ability to generate income from its assets on its balance sheet.